Ah, I'd like to invite you all to just, ah, in celebration of here I am. Ah, and then your first loop could be an in celebration of others being here. So you can give it of attention to you, and then give an of attention maybe to somebody whose face you don't recognize, and welcoming. Welcoming is one of my favorite verbs. And one of the things I wanted to do today with our loops and scoops is to add verbs to it, because when we think about looping our attention, the verbs can be more unconscious, like pay attention or stop what you're doing or do this right. So how can you right now create just an in your body? That feels so delicious to me. I'm imagining it kind of trickling down. I was remembering one of those machines where the coins come in the top and then they spread out and they all trickle down. And imagining your moving all the way through your body. Ah. And then you can let yourself scoop in some more. I love making the sound because it is so opening. Just even if you didn't feel open and you just say notice how that gives you that sense of being supported, letting go, and scooping in any ahs. Notice if there's any place in your body that could use an ah, and how extravagantly you can create an So you can go an operatic or you could do a delicate little And when you're sending your out, you can imagine that you're in Hollywood Bowl or the stadium that's local to you, and let your include the whole stadium. And then coming back to you with What I'm also enjoying about the is that it cleans out any mind debris, any thinky, like, got to, I didn't. So notice the mind chatter that you might have going on right now. And notice what happens when you just send an through your brain. So for me, I get this open space. And then I can take a couple of breaths and simply enjoy the open space. Humans are so eager to insert something, busy, but just notice the refreshment of the And I'm also thinking of the is like, has a bounce to it, has a lovely little kind of wave to it. And notice if you can take that wave of the and send that out with your attention. Just send that out with your gaze. I also like the word gaze as instead of pay attention. So if you gaze out, for me, gazing has more of that quality. It also has a kind of a benign quality. If I'm gazing, I'm just seeing what's there. And then I'm returning my gaze inward. And anytime you get busy in there, just ah. So gazing out, and gazing in. And one of the things I wanted to suggest for our play today is noticing what the rhythm of your gazing and your ahhing is today. So for me, it's because we've got more moisture coming in here. We're having May showers today and then May rain in a couple of days, which is absolutely wonderful. Our reservoir is now at 73%, which it hasn't been since the late 90s. So that's very, that's an ah. So you can have a celebratory ah and a ah, sinking in and I'd like you to play. Sometimes I find it helpful to play with my hands too, to get the rhythm that feels most delicious to me for my ah and my gazing. So for me, it's feeling more like a slow motion basketball toss. It's got much more of a easy. So just notice, play with different rhythms and different ways of letting your hands land. You can gaze out and scoop in. You can scoop out and scoop and gaze in. So letting yourself play with the ah, and gazing. For me, also, gazing has more spaciousness to it. I also, of course, want to be able to use my attention in a one-pointed way. But I think that that's a lot of our default now, is like, look at that. And oh my God, that narrows our attention. So gazing, for me, has a more of a landscape feeling. I'm taking in what's here, and it allows me to see the beauty, to open to space. So letting yourself play with what's the rhythm, and see if you can actually find the rhythm that feels most delicious to you. I'm sharing mine with you, and you can ramp it up or ramp it down or add in more syncopation, but letting yourself play with receiving. For me, the ah allows me to receive. Because I'm taking a full out breath, and then I take in with my next in breath. So you might now also notice how your breathing can support this rhythm. And if you find the most delicious rhythm, I find that it opens my breathing and gives me especially more breathing out to the sides and in my back and low down into my diaphragm. So I'm moving out of any breathing, up, and I'm breathing out and down and back. And then I might forget, oh yes, there's a world out here. So I come back to my rhythm of looping. And you notice I'm using my hands at the same time because I've been practicing long enough that I can actually do both of them at the same time. I can loop out and loop to me at the same time. So those of you who've got a little ambition going this morning, just try that on. How can I do both of these at the same time? Because we first call this lurch of attention, because you go, oh, right, I forgot. And then you come back the other way. And then it becomes, I think, kind of more of a loop. And then it can become a circle. But then it actually can become a sphere where you can occupy the whole space with your attention. And when I out into all of the space, I feel this very delicious kind of, it's kind of like a spritzing through my body. So notice for you the body sensations of ahhing out, and can become ah, with a little W in there. So it can become ah, ah, ah. And you can play back and forth from ah to ah and create a little bit more juiciness, and sending that to any place in your physical body that would like some touch or would like some of your attention. I'm feeling that in my low back. Mm. Mm. And then continuing to return to, I like to come back to the ah. I notice that if I go just with the movement and my breathing, that I don't feel quite as rich. So the combination, you can kind of tweak the combination for you of ah and looping and using your hands and finding the rhythm. But whenever I kind of lose it, I come back to ah. And then I notice, does my attention want to stay with me, or is my attention ready to go out? Because there's a whole other element of how we use our attention by choice. Am I actually sending my attention where I want to, or where I've been programmed to? Because we've had years and years of people telling us how to pay attention and when to pay attention, when not to. So this experiment can be a great way of finding your organic attention out, attention in. Ah. And I'm finding also the pitch of my ah changes a little bit. I could start it a little higher, and now I'm feeling it a little lower, and I'm feeling it ah in different places. I'm feeling it further down in my chest and more in my back. So you can also use your hands to touch and resonate with the ah, because we think of it just being up here, but it actually is vibrating a whole lot of your body. Ah, ooh, and I can feel it in my back all the way down to the end of my ribs. That's very cool. So when you're playing with this, using touch, using sound, having maybe even just a few minutes to find your ah, and letting that give you the place that is refreshing to you, and also a pace that you can come back to. Ah, And I'm also inclined to just see if you changed your position slightly. So if you stood up or you just changed your position sitting, whether that opens up more space for the ah to move in you. And I'm also finding some of this movement, both front and back, what we call the yes breath, but also side to side. Ah, begins to open up more of my space for giving attention. And I also got a little wave of heat. So notice if you get, a wave of energy, or sometimes it might bring up feeling, or yeah, beautiful. So give yourself just a moment now to let your body do whatever it wants to do with all of this play that we've had for the last several minutes. Just, mine feels I'm very vibrating, feel very relaxed. It's really wonderful to have this kind of pause before getting back into action. And so even just a couple of minutes of and then and gazing, those two go so nicely together. Wonderful. Well, I didn't know till I walked in the door this morning and sat down what I was going to do. So I feel very proud of me for just going, okay, here we go. What's going to happen? So I really, it's our co-creativity that allows all of this to happen. And I so appreciate you experimenting and giving your time to connect, because we're accelerating our connection and really filling the reservoir for all of us in a way that's much more effective. And then we can use that juice, like getting our batteries all filled up. I am about to plug in my electric car again, and I realized that we can plug in ourselves also. So let me pull up Presence Connect Play and see what we got for today. Tap for new combo. So presence has been favoring wonder for the last several times. So presence is, So I'm thinking that has qualities. So shifts you into your wonder brain. And I find that shifts me into whole body wonder. So that's something that you could add to your presencing. And sometimes I forget and I leap over presencing to connect and get something done. And that always gets me into trouble. If I'm not actually located before I go off into action, I literally can leave things trailing behind. So connect is receive communication with open posture and breath. So in our receiving of somebody else's communication, almost always people brace in some way or another, because so many of us have experienced criticism and expect criticism. So what if you used opening your posture? You could even use these love scoops, as a signal to open your posture. And then that really allows you to receive. It's my opinion that our biggest human task is to let ourselves be affected by the attention of others, is really to let love in. And if we're all closed up, fighting, fleeing, cringing, we can't receive the energy that is there for us. So playing with the place that I used to cringe was around my shoulders, and because it was always about something I would hear. So just take a moment and notice where your closed place is, where you're like, your something's coming at me place is, and let yourself apply a little love scooping to it, just opening that, acknowledging. You can also, instead of jumping over, you might acknowledge, like I grew up just pickled in criticism. So it was no wonder that whenever, Gay would say, I notice and I didn't even realize I was cringing for a long time. But using your body to help smooth that out is the most effective thing that you can do. And then play is one of the tosses, which is tell me more. And that phrase I have found to be so effective, because we're so likely to jump to interpreting, or judging or having an opinion, rather than saying, or tell me more. And I found if I do that with curiosity, I can combine that with the of presence. If I say, tell me more, the person almost always will. And even if I don't know them, I've done this with strangers, people I've met at the grocery store. Oh, one thing I've been noticing is that in this practice of looping and of appreciating, I now notice that where I'm in the world, people often start with appreciation in my direction. So I've done this for many, many years of leading with appreciation. And now it's working. We're spreading it. It's coming back. So tell me more, but also with a sense of sensitive awareness, of appreciation, is very, very powerful. So thank you so much. I'm going to go now and make some breakfast for Gay, who's doing so much better that we're sending home care away now. So he's hopping around and he's able to move his leg up into bed and he's doing his PT. And so that's part of where my is coming from. It's like, so thank you for all of your loving support and caring. And of course, we're there's a long way to recover, but recovering is happening. So, so thank you and until next time. Bye now.